Ladies and gentlemen, fellow patriots across the globe, thank you for tuning in one more time to neighborhoodnewsstudio.com. We got a great lineup ahead of us today. We got John O'Loughlin doing his usual, kicking off the day at 11 a.m. Eastern Time with McDuff Lives. We got Research Roadshow with George Webb following up McDuff at 12 p.m. We got Mark Kulak and Housatonic Live at 2 p.m. Bill Taylor with D-State Analytics at 4 p.m. and Peter Duke with the Duke Report closing out the day at 5 p.m. Eastern Time. And make sure, ladies and gentlemen, you share neighborhoodnewsstudio.com with a family member, with a friend, a close acquaintance, a far acquaintance, someone you hate, just random person on the street. Share it with someone. We need to spread this information as quickly as possible and to as many people as possible. So without further ado, please welcome John O'Loughlin with McDuff Lives.
And good morning, and thank you, Andy, and thank you, everybody at Neighborhood News Studio for producing the shows for all of us today. It's going to be a big day, and a lot of great information just on tap here at Neighborhood News Studio. So stick around after the show. If you're watching me on McDuff Lives 3, be sure and, just mark the Neighborhood News Studio for a resource that you can turn to after McDuff Lives is over this morning at noon, because you don't want to miss any of the great content here at Neighborhood News Studio. Well, it's a pleasure to be broadcasting with Neighborhood News, and also on my own channels. I've got 2 channels open right now. I don't seem to be able to close out either of them because they both have about the same number of followers right now, and I don't want to lose anybody. So unless I get another strike, I'll probably keep broadcasting on both of my open channels right now, just so you know what's going on. Now, as far as the show today, good morning, Kathy Sue, and that's good. And one other thing, kudos to Andy for doing the ask. It's the hardest thing that we have to do as producers or presenters, and we're trying to get a channel started or a website or this entire network started, and that is to actually look in the camera and ask you to do something. Believe me, it's not an easy talent, and you see people that are professionals at it. Well, they've practiced it for years and years, but Andy's asking you to pass this on to somebody else. And it's not fun to ask somebody to do something like that, but we have to do it. It's what our mission is to spread the word. So please be part of that, and maybe find one person today that you can share this with. Send it to them in an email. Okay, thank you very much. We've been working hard on the great book by William Cooper, Behold a Pale Horse. And it's been my pleasure to discover the first major chapter 1, and he puts it up front because it's so important. And it's called Silent Weapons for Quiet Wars. And he published this in 1979, but this booklet called Silent Weapons was apparently published secretly in 1954 to the first meeting of the Bilderbergers. And so it's written in a way as to address the people that are at the secret conference and have agreed to maintain that silence or else. So that's where Cooper's Silent Weapons for Quiet Wars source is. And that we should take that seriously, because the Prince Bernhard and all the big banks and the big oil companies, Bilderberg's very, very powerful. What's you got there, Andy? Looks like
This is your the booklet you're talking about, Silent Weapons for Quiet Wars.
Right. Okay. So that was reprinted in this book, but I'd love to see if there's a date on that when that Operations Research Technical Manual was published, because this is the book that that Cooper describes.
It was
Well,
discovered in a surplus copier purchased from Boeing Aircraft in 1986, reveals details of a plan hatched in the embryonic days of the Cold War, which called for the control of the masses through manipulation of industry, peoples, pastimes, education, and political leanings. So is this like the Klaus Schwab World Economic Forum manual, pretty much?
it's the Bilderberg Manual. Yeah.
Okay.
In 1954 is when, according to Cooper, that's when this was originally published at the first Bilderberg meeting. So you see, the purpose of the Bilderberg meeting is to implement this strategy. And that's what my last two shows have been about, has been getting into the details of that. Well, let's yeah, let's leave it off the screen for me, Andy, so I don't get distracted by it, because then I lose my train of thought. But I do appreciate you putting it up there. Hang on a second. Um, Now, what Cooper did was to emphasize, and he being an engineering person, he could understand all the diagrams that you can see in there. If you look at my show from yesterday, you can see that I scroll through a lot of technical diagrams that look like circuits. They look like electrical circuits diagrams that we used to have to draw if you wanted to get into the amateur radio, for instance. You had to understand how transistors and capacitors and inductors and all that works. And I don't, but it doesn't matter, because the idea is that it's a model, it is a metaphor for what the silent weapons are. The silent weapons are the economy, and the way that the weapons work is like the flywheel on a car, or the flywheel on any engine. And just to remind you that from what we talked about, the flywheel operates to transfer up and down motion to circular motion. So we can create up and down motion easily with pistons, or, for instance, the old sewing machines, or an old pump organ, or the potter's wheel, where you have your feet on these two pedals, and you pump them back and forth, and you're doing that up and down motion. But then there's a belt attached to a wheel, attached to a bigger wheel, and which that converts that to energy that is circular. And the reason that you do that is so that you have a smooth delivery of energy, so that the potter on his potter's wheel is able to shape that pot as it spins around evenly, without it bouncing up and down or getting out of whack. And the same thing happens in a car, where the pistons of the engine go up and down, but because of the flywheel, and then because of the transmission and the what they call a torque converter, this is all transferred into the energy that makes the wheels spin on your rear axle. So that conversion also is accompanied by storing energy, because a flywheel, not only can it convert that energy, but it can also store it up just kind of like a spring stores energy, so that when your car is still running, even though you've got the brakes on, it's still a smooth running engine. It doesn't stop when you put the brakes on. It continues to store up that energy, so that when you get going, you've got some energy behind it. A little mechanical car that you could run on your table as a child, you would roll it, and spin the back wheels, and then put it down on the table. And not only would it roll according to the energy you gave it, but it also has stored up energy in the flywheel inside of that little toy. And that's what keeps it going another 10 yards or so. The stored up energy effect. Okay, I don't want to get too much into that. That's the basic, simple idea of the silent weapon. The silent weapon converts all of our energy that we do. We go to work, we beat our heads against the ceiling, we, work our asses off, but it's all energy that is not organized in a smooth and continuous manner so that the car never stops. And without a governor or a flywheel or something to convert that kind of zigzag, reckless up and down energy that we all generate as individuals into a smooth machine, a lot of the energy is wasted. So, in preparing the economy to shape their needs, we are treated like the pistons in the engine. And they don't care if they beat the pistons to death, they just put in another piston. And that is the way that the world is working right now. Now, how do we justify that? How do we justify doing that to ordinary people that shouldn't be mistreated? Why won't you just do the golden rule? Why do you have to mistreat people and drive them crazy with bullying at work, or put them into a mine where they have to work or they won't eat? Why do you mistreat people, and how do you justify that in your mind? Well, this brings me to the black sun. Um, I published yesterday on my Twitter. Let me just go ahead and grab a random flywheel off of Google and see what we get. All right, I'm going to share this on my screen so you can see it. All right. Now, on the right, you see a flywheel um, predator, I think it is. It's an old version of a flywheel, and all these other flywheels on the I just Googled it, and these are the flywheels you see. Um, they give you the general picture of a bunch of blades that are going to go around in a circle. Okay. Now, how far is that from the black sun symbol? I suggest to you that it's not that far. I find it to be kind of appealing. The idea of jumping down the rabbit hole of, is this telling us something? Because what we have from Bill Cooper's work, we have the idea that a machine goes round and round that keeps the banker's economy going. It keeps whatever money is owed to somebody, it's going to get paid because of the system, and that is the flywheel. It makes sure that if somebody is late for work, the place doesn't stop working. That there's something that works, that substitutes that if a crop fails, that there's still enough money somewhere to keep the system going. And if whatever happens, that system's going to keep on going. And I sense that kind of momentum. Why else did they put it in the form of a wheel? It is a wheel. That wheels are meant to turn and to do work. And the definition of this black sun, according to Wikipedia, is that it is a sun. It's the black sun symbol, and it's made by 12 sig runes, SIG, or Zigel, or it just means the sigma, the Greek letter sigma. It's just a letter, but it's a rune version of the letter S. And 12 of them rotating around in a circle are all about victory. And it is the victory wheel for the Black Sun. The wheel itself was made into a mosaic in the floor of a castle called Wewelsburg in Germany, designed and built at the behest of Heinrich Himmler. Himmler, of course, the head of the spooky departments of the Nazis, the Ahnenerbe, the guy that brings in all of the spookiness. Now, the question is, how does that Black Sun from the 1930s and 40s, designed and built by the SS, the head of the SS, Heinrich Himmler, how does that relate to the Nazism or I guess Nazism is a good word for it, the white supremacists of today, such as the shooter up in Buffalo, okay? Because he's wearing that same emblem on his chest, and he's apparently brought a manifesto with him about how he's got to stop the what does he call it? What do they call it? The replacement theory or something, whereby the idea is that all the white people are getting replaced, killed off, and they're importing people of color to replace them, and that's why the borders are open. And it's a theory, and it's something that is all over the press right now. I mean, I don't look at the press much, but they love to talk about things like that. So that, to me, the question is, why would this American young person be wearing that Black Sun off of the floor of the Wewelsburg Castle on his chest, right? Well, here's where we get into some esoteric psychology, because when you consider the idea of the Black Sun just Googling Black Sun, one of the things that you come up with is Carl Jung. Now, I'm not a great expert on Carl Jung by any means, but the idea of Carl Jung's philosophy and why it was appealing to the Nazis, and it was very much appealing to the Nazis, is the idea that we have to. Yeah, let's not put that up there, because I'll just get distracted again, Andy. Thanks. Yeah. Carl Jung was appealed to the Nazis because he said that you have to face the evil within yourself and acknowledge that it exists and it is part of life in order for you to fulfill your destiny. Carl Jung is providing a philosophy that's consistent with Nietzsche, beyond good and evil. Why should we be hung up on Christian values? We have to acknowledge that evil is part of of our experience, of our lives, and of everybody's lives. And if you don't do that, you can't be happy. You cannot fulfill your destiny, right? So what Jung is talking about in referring to a black sun is a version of the sun that basically is the opposite of light. It's the darkness. that darkness is satanic. It is evil. It is pure evil. And if you want to do evil things and you need some philosophy to justify you doing it, then you can look at Nietzsche, you can look at Freud, you can look at Carl Jung. You can look at what they call the new school from the Frankfurt School with well, those two brothers and all, but this Frankfurt School comes out to support the Cold War, and the Cold War is also part of the extension of this Black Sun philosophy. Well, what do I mean by that? I mean that if you believe in that big machine, that it has to keep going, that has to keep on going, and the purpose of that machine is what? It's not to do good, it's not to do evil, it is simply to advance into the future, to advance mankind, to move forward out of the chaos and the abyss into the paradise of the next life when we have our new world order. But how do we get to the new world order when there's all of these people around here that are useless eaters and dirty and, speak weird languages and don't look like, I don't want my daughter to marry one of them. Well, how do we get to our new world order? Well, we have to have a philosophy that's kind of, Masonic, really, that as above, so below. And solve et coagula. That's when we say make order from chaos, ordo ab chao, well, more important to me is the first word, solve, which means in Latin, it means to break apart, to dissolve, to crush. And if you crush the existing circumstances, then you've got the chaos that you can now be the phoenix and rise up out of the chaos, right? What do you do to get rid of all of the useless eaters? Well, you've got to do something that is extraordinary. You've got to do something that you feel is your destiny. You pick up your spear of destiny and I have to strike. So in order to illustrate that, I want to go over to another screen share, if I may. This is from a speech by Gail Stevens describing the Lincoln assassination. April 11th, 1865, Lincoln makes a speech, and I'm going to bring this up to the screen for you as well. This is a presentation by the District of Columbia Civil War Roundtable. And let's see, what did I do with it? Oh, I'm sorry, just a second. I see what I did. Okay, and maybe I can just play this for a second. Lincoln's last speech, quote, "It is unsatisfactory to give some that the elective franchise is not given to the colored man. It is unsatisfactory to some that the elective franchise, and the vote, is not given to the colored man." This is Lincoln saying this on April 11th, 1865. "I would myself prefer that it were now conferred on the very intelligent and those who served our cause as soldiers." Okay. In other words, the U.S. colored troops were now going to get the vote, right?
Lincoln while the president was watching a play at Ford's Theater. That same night, Booth associates Lewis Powell and George Atzerodt were to kill Secretary of State William Seward and Vice President Andrew Johnson. Both men failed. The Lincoln assassination was quite simply a crucial event in American history. Lincoln the deft politician who had led the Union ably through a great Civil War, was murdered, leaving divisive and complex issues. Most importantly, the future of the freed people and the vanquished Confederacy to far less able men. All lacked Lincoln's vision, political ability, and intellect. And instead of using victory to propel the nation forward, they fought each other and lost valuable time that this nation, quite frankly, has not yet recovered. So who were the accused conspirators? Well, first, clearly the mastermind, John Wilkes Booth, a famous actor. David Harold, a pharmacist and an avid hunter who knew the back roads of Southern Maryland well. George Atzerodt, who had made a living during the war in Canada.
Skip through that a little bit.
Edmund Spangler, a carpenter and a stagehand, the leader of the conspiracy, who was a famous actor and an intelligent, daring man whose fury at the defeat of his beloved South knew no bounds.
Check this out.
As you can see by the first two quotes here on the screen. He was handsome, he was wealthy, he was charismatic, and he led his motley circle of conspirators with ease. He believed passionately in the superiority of Southern society and the rightness of the Southern cause, that is slavery. And he believed Lincoln was a tyrant who had used every means to destroy his country, that is, the Confederacy. Now, he also said, interesting, this quote, the third quote here grabbed me, because this is one of those things, God made me do it, which is just one of those moments of narcissism that it indicates what Booth thought about himself as much as anything. His Booth's co-conspirators were also dedicated supporters of the South.
All right. The point that I'm trying to make here, and I want you to just let me read this. Our country owed all her troubles to him, and God simply made me the instrument of his punishment. Okay. So what is the meaning when she says this is narcissism? This is somebody that thinks so much of himself that he would be the instrument of God. That when Lincoln says we are going to allow the freed people to vote, you know, the intelligent and the soldiers of them, well, okay, that's enough for Booth. He says, no, you have now crossed the boundary that I know can never be crossed, because I have a direct relationship with God, and God is speaking to me saying, you got to get rid of this president. He's going to destroy the beautiful country that we've made. That she calls it narcissism. Okay. Other words for it, maybe brainwashed. But I think also consider the effect of the psychobabble of the day around Freemasonry, around the Blavatsky and all of the crazy British stuff that he was familiar with, you know, Edward Bulwer Lytton, and the but more importantly, the idea of slavery is essential to the elite plan of dominating the world. And if the Black people are no longer inferior, not judged too inferior to vote, then the whole plan falls down. Because the elites are going to run the world based upon their superior race. This is what Palmerston Temple, this is what the whole British Secret Service, and connecting with Blavatsky and the Habsburgs and the Viennese, and then creating all of those young Europe movements with Mazzini, all of this attempt to control the world depends upon racism. And when you are part of the system that works with the crushing of people based upon the color of their skin, that's the way the machine works. That's who runs the cotton gin. That's who picks the cotton. That's who, runs the sugar mills. And those are the people that, you work to death in the mines. Those are the people that this is the way the Nazis worked. Prisoners of war were treated like prisoners of war in the Middle Ages. They were put to work, and worked to death. Didn't matter if you were Jewish, if you were French, if you were Italian, it doesn't matter. If you were a prisoner of war, then you got caught and you are screwed, and you now are a slave. This whole idea is so anti-Christian that they have to have a philosophy behind it, and that is the black sun. The black sun is the opposite of the good sun. But without the black sun, the fallen angel, okay, Satan, Lucifer, if the black sun is Lucifer, Lucifer, the light bearer. And this idea mentally, if you can convince people that evil is part of the world, Paradise Lost, Milton. Evil is not just, some esoteric idea off in your mind. Evil exists, and so when you see evil in the form of Abraham Lincoln, it's your duty to eliminate it. That is anti-Christian. The whole idea is anti-Christian. We are, as Christians, told to turn the other cheek, and told to treat others as we would expect to be treated ourselves. The black sun is the dark side of Freemasonry. It is the Templars. It is the people that Isaac Asimov wrote about in Foundation, where they decided, well, we're smarter than everybody else, so we can speed up the evolution by certain techniques. In Foundation, one of their techniques was to hide the nuclear power system from the common people, so that people would get power, but they didn't know where it came from. They didn't understand that there was nuclear power. They didn't understand, they knew nothing about science because they weren't educated. They were just left to live their, short, happy lives out on the surface while all the nuclear technology is run beneath the surface of the earth by the warlocks, right? Or the Molochs. Who was it? The Morlocks. Yeah. All of it sounds like Moloch, and Moloch is the devil, and the devil is the one that runs the dark side, the black sun side. Let's see here. Brightmore Dinosaur says Jesuit backgrounds. Well, yeah. Have you ever seen a black sun symbol that's associated with the Jesuits? I have. Let's go back to Google for a second. Put Jesuit. Okay, now let's share this page. Well, hello there. Society of Jesus, Black Sun, Wikipedia, and Google comes up with these two images right next to each other. So, hey, it's not just me, guys. It's not just me. IHS, you know, in hoc signo. In this sign we conquer. In hoc signo. Okay, we will conquer. The Black Sun may very well be a reference to the Jesuits. Because is it not the Jesuits that are acting in such a way that the ends justify the means? If you look historically at the criticism of the Jesuits, it's always that they are manipulative, treacherous, and untrustworthy. And there have been periods in this country when they've basically been run out of town, but not now. They have a happy, smiley face right now, especially all over the United States, where they do good things. They're great teachers. They run education. They run churches. They run charities. It looks to me like they're just as good as any religion around, except for when you get into the European side of it, and you trace, back to uh, Ignacio. I mean, um, yeah, Loyola, Ignatius Loyola. That if you understand what that history, and the Schiller Institute Executive Intelligence Review has a number of great articles about that, which you can see that the Jesuits have historically been accused of using evil to achieve what they consider to be good. What is the purpose of the Jesuits? Well, it is to fight a war, the war of the Counter-Reformation, the defeat of Luther, the defeat of Protestantism, the extermination of any church that competes with Roman Catholicism. Can we not see that Russia is also a target of this? That their so-called Orthodox Christianity is not acceptable to traditional Roman Catholicism, and that traditional Roman Catholicism is imperial in nature. It is, you look at the history of the Holy Roman Empire and the popes, and when they're working together, they've got everything going for each other. If they're working against each other, then there's war, and horrible war. But the influence of the papacy has always been connected since what, the Middle Ages, to land and to controlling empires. And so they have their own nobles, they have their own uh, uh, ceremonies, and they appoint people, to great orders like the Order of St. Gregory or the Knights of Malta or all the other ones you can think of. I don't know all the names of them, but these things create, the appearance of, I am saved, I am going to heaven, I am one of the good people, and you should do what I say. I don't think this is far-fetched at all, that the Black Sun and the Jesuit Black Sun may very well be two different ways to say the same thing. I'm going to recommend to you a particular EIR article. I'll go ahead and show that to you too, since we've got this screen sharing option. This is the EIR from February 10th, 1989. And the big story I wanted to highlight is the murder of Roberto Calvi tied to global Satanist cult. Okay. Let me get down to that article. The global Satanist cult is the Black Sun cult. And when you see, the note that goes along with that shooter in Baltimore, where there's just wait for the sign, to me, this is serious. This is a organized conspiracy that is like the Gladio in Europe. And, George Webb has reported for years on the stay behind army concept coming here to the United States in the form of the Gulen compounds, such as there's one in South Carolina. There's, the Islamic centers that are kind of off by their own and are said to be weapons caches. And it looks to me like it's Gladio, and Gladio is definitely a Vatican project. It's a combination of the Vatican and the Wall Street and London banks working together with Henry Kissinger to continue that big wheel, that big flywheel going around that's grinding up people, grinding up resources, grinding everything down into energy that they can use to run their flywheel. That's that wonderful article about tuning at 432. The Royal Family and the Freemasons by Scott Thompson. That's an article that's worth reading as well, connecting the Jack Ripper story to the Freemasons. Prince Charles of the New Age. Here we go. Let me read some of this. When President George Bush opens the White House doors to Prince Charles during February trip to the United States, he'll be welcoming one of the world's most prominent embodiments of the satanic Gnostic currents now poisoning Western civilization. Satanic Gnostic currents. Satanic is what I'm talking about. Gnostic is what we're talking about. Gnostic means I have a personal relationship with God that tells me that I can do what I will. Triumph des Willens. The triumph of the will. Leni Riefenstahl. Do what thou wilt. Aleister Crowley. Tavistock. British Freemasons. Worship the Black Sun. Carl Jung. Although the prince, whose immediate ascension to the throne of England has been taken up as a cause célèbre by the Druidic order, among the other factions of the occult-ridden British establishment, none has never, to our knowledge, openly professed to being a devotee of Gnosticism or the other so-called alternative religious traditions. The Prince and the Warlock. It's hardly surprising that the Windsor family, whose history has been marked by extreme forms of occult practices, and bizarre beliefs, should have spawned someone like Charles, whose conversations with plants and supports of alternative medicine have drawn ridicule from some of the British press. The most telling clues to Charles's true beliefs can be found in his and his father, Prince Philip's, association with the British networks linked to the Temple of Understanding, the Lucis Trust. Okay, the Lucis Trust. We'll have to study that, the history of that, but this is Lucifer Trust. And perhaps more importantly, his professed interest in the work of the infamous Carl Jung, who the pro-Nazi Swiss psychoanalyst whose Gnostic beliefs and practices earned him the sobriquet, the Warlock of Zurich. At various times over the last decade, the prince has praised Jung's work asserting that it makes a great deal of sense in many, many areas. Charles appears to have been led to Jung by the South African-born cultist Lawrence van der Post, once a political military aide to Charles's favorite uncle, Lord Mountbatten, a believer in flying saucers. Van der Post counted Jung among his closest friends and emerged as one of Jung's most zealous promoters after his death in 1961. Van der Post has not only authored a biography of Jung called Jung in the Spirit of Our Times and made a film version of his life, but he's traveled around the globe preaching the virtues of Jung's Gnosticism, in which he sees the guidelines for a new age to come. Jung and the Age of Aquarius. The implications of Prince Charles's fascination with Jung are highly dangerous. Since Christianity's inception, Gnosticism has been considered its principal enemy, and rightly so. The Gnostics believed that God, who created the material world, is evil. Wow. The God that created the material world is evil. You know, doesn't that sound like the Frankists that Bill Taylor talks about? That, you know, in order to achieve the real good spiritual happiness, we have to destroy the world. We have to act opposite of what the Bible teaches. It's the same thing to me. It's all a psychological attempt to control people's minds by taking away their natural affinity towards life and their natural love of each other and of everything that has to do with life, and turn it into a game of good versus evil, and that using evil as a way to achieve good. That is what the black sun symbol is. That's what the Jesuits have done historically. And here's Jung, who is a protege of Freud. Freud, the nutcase cocaine freak, who was able to publish enough of his crap to become the world's most famous psychoanalyst. All of it is just a turn away from God, a turn away from goodness, a turn away from the love of our beautiful planet, and a call to militancy, to do something, to shoot President Lincoln, to shoot somebody, to do something horrible in the name of goodness. The Gnostics believe that the God who created the material world is evil. They practiced abortion, contraception, and infanticide because they held that procreation was simply the creation of more evil. In their perverted view, the material world must be destroyed in order to bring about the triumph of the higher spiritual God. Rampant destruction, chaos, and death were good because they would usher in the new age. This hatred of God's creation and deliberate commitment to destroy it was eloquently depicted by John Milton in Paradise Lost as the crucial point at which Lucifer, the angel of light, was transformed into Satan. Well, there's a lot in this, and I really recommend that you go to this particular EIR, February 10th, 1989, and read that article, and then the next one, and then the next one by Jeffrey Steinberg, which is really fabulous. Gretchen Small is another great one. But this whole article here is about Gnosticism and understanding what it is and why Carl Jung is so important to it. Now, the last thing I want to refer you to today is a book. And this book is called Aryan Cults. I'm sorry, let me see what you guys are looking at. Get rid of that one. And there's a book that I need to get. It's called Aryan Cults, Esoteric Nazism, and the Politics of Identity by Nicholas Goodrick-Clark, a 2003 book. And let me just give you a bit of the blurb here, because this is how my whole show kind of gets tied together in what he's written here. Share screen, pick the right tab, and here we go. So the book is about Aryan cults, right? Black Sun is both an enthralling and a deeply disturbing work. It deserves the most serious attention and a wide readership. Nicholas Goodrick-Clark has done pioneering work in the field of the occult roots of Nazism. In the present volume, he performs the same invaluable service with regard to the ideological fantasies of post-war neo-fascism. This book written long before the Buffalo shooting, okay? But now, this is the connection between fascism and neo-fascism. Black Sun examines the new neo-fascist ideology, showing how hate groups, militias, and conspiracy cults attempt to gain influence. Based on interviews and extensive research into underground groups, Black Sun documents the new Nazi and fascist sects that have sprung up from the 1970s through the 1990s and examines the mentality and motivation of these far-right extremists. The result is a detailed, grounded portrait of the mythical and devotional aspects of Hitler cults among Aryan mystics, racist skinheads, Nazi Satanists, heavy metal music fans, and in occult literature. Black Sun symbol is used by esoteric Nazis in Germany and abroad since 1990, taken from an inlay on the marble floor of the Gruppenführer Hall in the Wewelsburg Castle, Heinrich Himmler's SS Staff College in Germany. The design is based on a 9th century Germanic ornament. Well, so there we go. I am trying to bring in to our understanding of this Black Sun symbol, okay, the esoteric background behind it, and to associate it with the idea of using evil to accomplish good, the worship of Satan, all of this Michael Aquino, Presidio stuff, all of the horrific child's, sacrifices, the awful, awful stuff is actually part of this Gnostic view of the world where you are rewarded for doing evil. So why the Black Sun on this guy's chest when he, just decides to murder people, especially, Black people, is because of the same reason that John Wilkes Booth shot President Lincoln, is that God, their God, is Satan. And that's my show for this morning. I'll see you guys tomorrow. I hope you enjoy the rest of the day, and stay with Neighborhood News Studio for your afternoon research. And I'm sure it'll be entertaining too. All right, back to you, Andy DeBala in the studio.
All right, thank you, John O'Loughlin, once again for your contributions to neighborhoodnewsstudio.com. The work and effort you put into your show every day is something to aim for, and John helped with kicking us off at Neighborhood News. He was one of the, between him and George, it was them two that helped us get off the ground. So John also does interviews usually at the second half of the day or at 8 p.m. Eastern time on his YouTube channels, McDuff Lives 3, McDuff Lives 2, and his normal channel, McDuff Lives. So make sure you go to his channels and like and subscribe. All right, to everyone on those channels on McDuff Lives, we are signing off right now. So make sure you go to Neighborhood News Studio and check out Research Roadshow with George Webb coming up next.